It is a great opportunity to be here with all of you, and I want to thank Memory for giving me the opportunity. Um, the topic, let me give you an introduction to myself. Dr. Samir Asaf. I have about 26 years of experience in business management, trained as an economist initially, and I got a master's degree in economics. I worked for AT&T for 14 years as a finance director, so kind of economics, finance, and so on. And then I took on additional leadership roles. I was with the World Bank and things like that. And yes, I have managed people, global teams around the world as a business leader. So from that perspective, also, I would like to share a few thoughts. Currently, I'm running a software company that actually deals with employee engagement, driven productivity and business intelligence and things like that. So that's where we leverage technology to maximize the value of people in organizations. So go ahead with this is to take around 10 to 15 minutes maybe to go through 6 slides to kind of set the stage for what's really um, what the future of work is looking like, not from my perspective, but from the perspective of the experts around the world. So we're going to look at that. And then I want to actually have an interactive discussion. So I'll open it up to Memory and we can just kind of discuss things, because I think one thing that I believe is nobody knows what the future will hold, right? So it will unfold, and we need to unfold and adapt to the future as it unfolds, right? So that's why I think everyone's contribution is important, and everyone has important perspectives to share. So let me start with a short few slides, and to I'll have to share the screen. Memory.
Yes,
Should
it's
I go ahead and
screen.
share the
Yes,
screen?
yes, you can share the
Okay.
screen.
All right.
Uh,
I'm going to share the screen, and just let me know if you can see
yeah,
uh, my screen.
yes,
Okay. So
yes, it's
uh, so I just have 6 slides. I'll go through them fairly quickly. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. So here, this I want to talk about this. Take it from the top. I mean, technology has been changing the way we work, right? So it's very important to recognize that technology, smartphones, it's totally changed the way we work, the productivity, the interaction, the engagement, the collaboration, so on, related to work. And you can also see that the work-life balance that we talk about, it's kind of the difference between work and life is kind of getting blurred. So we are actually working from home as well. Our phone is always with us. We're answering emails. Few of us actually shut everything down at 5 o'clock when we go home. So that's one of the things that I see happening. Then this Deloitte talks about this whole thing about artificial intelligence. Again, from a technology perspective, it's the robotics. You talk about industrial productivity and so on, AI driven cognitive computing and everything like productivity drivers. Think about significant improvements that we can expect in the future, again from a technology perspective. Now, the fall through to that is, or fall through from that is vulnerability, right? So automation is going to kill a lot of jobs, and what does that do to sort of standard menial unskilled labor? It's going to go away as work becomes automated with the IoT and industrial automation. Then from a decision making perspective, if you're a business leader, you always make decisions and you use data to make decisions. And we talk about a tsunami of data. So we all know that data is exploding, exponential growth in data for decision making, and a lot of data these days are coming from the devices, the IoT devices. So that's a lot of data, but the problem is there's not enough strategic insights that's coming to the decision makers. And that's why, according to a PwC research of CEOs around the world, 70% CEOs are saying that they do not have the strategic insights they need for decision making. Now, back to the workforce, think about the millennials entering the workforce. By some estimates, by 2030, there would be 70% of the workforce that are millennials. Now, millennials are a bit of a different breed, if I may put it that way, compared to baby boomers and Gen Xers and even Gen Ys. The millennials were born with the internet, right? So they want everything right now. And the upshot to that is, from a future of work perspective, they want to be engaged. And they don't want to be engaged once a year through a voice of employee survey. They want to be engaged in real time, and they want their voices heard, and they want to be valued. And diversity is key to inclusion. So we talk about that a little bit as we move forward. See, the other thing that's happening, as you know, is that commitment to work is there, but loyalty to work is evaporating, right? So the nature of a career is kind of shrinking. So people don't work for a company for 30 years anymore. People work for a company for a few years, 3 years, 4 years, even according to some experts, 6, 7 years is the optimum after which you should actually move on to something new. Explosion in contingent work. So one of the trends we are seeing, especially in the US and parts of Europe, is that people are doing multiple jobs. So there is this lighting effect that's happening. People have their 9 to 5, but then they want to do more, and they're getting involved with either social work or some other part-time job or something else they're doing. So all these are parts of how we see the future of work unfolding. Now, one of the other elements is sort of disruption at the workplace. So because of technology, you have a highly connected workplace, right? So you got these virtual teams, especially with COVID and stuff. Virtual work has become the new normal. um, we talk about open innovation and crowdsourcing, distributed workflow, crowdsourcing ideas, concepts, innovations. So think about, as we move forward, it's more like an ecosystem that's work is happening at the workplace, beyond the workplace, anytime, anywhere kind of mentality, anywhere, any device mentality and approach. Work is getting disrupted all the time, and then changed by the automation effect that we talked about. A lot of AI, machine learning we referred to earlier. So the automation will mean that um, in the future, the work that will go away are the standard work that doesn't require innovation and sort of kind of non-standard thinking. So uh, now, from a human capability perspective, it is increasingly important to be able to make decisions, synthesize a lot of diverse data. There are things that the softwares and the AIs cannot do, and that is context. Okay, so machine learning fails to understand context. So they get data and they will run the algorithms, but the humans are very good at understanding. Memory talks about in psychology, industrial psychology, and productivity, and how you need to leverage the competence of people to maximize performance. Sorry, back. Uh, so this part of human-centered um, judgments, synthesizing data, understanding context, collaborating with others, building trust, and inspiring, and the motivation that we talk about, the expertise, the creativity, and the relationships. This is not going away. So, you know, I don't believe that AI and machine learning will kill all jobs, or most jobs even. There is a good opportunity for us to move to these kinds of skills and competencies that will support us moving forward. Now, the structure of work is going to change, of course, in the future. You have a lot of analytics that comes in. So be ready to make decisions based on data, and a lot of different kinds of analytics, because of the explosion of data. We have so much more data these days compared to what we had before. Another thing is this continuous learning, emergent collaboration. These are The collaboration is key, right? So at work, out of work, you're always connected, and collaborating is key. um, I think job descriptions are going to become less and less important, as people and the millennials want to contribute everywhere, not just within their um, bucket of job description areas. So we need to think about letting people contribute wherever they can in order to improve productivity. So high performance organizations are the way of the future. I mean, organizations are all the time trying to improve their efficiency, their productivity, and their performance. And now they have the tools, and the tools in terms of softwares and technologies and things like that, to achieve high performance. Now, I just want to show this because there is this renewed focus on the employee experience. In the US, this is big. In Europe, it's also big, because employers are increasingly realizing that the millennial workforce wants a great employee experience, and the customers want a great customer experience. So it's now what we call experience economy. So the culture, the physical, the digital, is everything is getting mixed up. And you know it's again, think of an ecosystem where the talent, the technology, the gig economy. Again, remember, I was telling you about the fact that people are doing all kinds of work, not just one work. So they're doing different gigs, if I may put it that way. Automation is affecting work, and continuous learning and skills enhancement is needed if you want to remain relevant. Um, there are other features like, you know, we talked about connectivity, we talked about technology and AI. These are the underlying drivers. The demographic element, of course, is different for each region of the world. You talk about Japan and Europe, the aging population. You talk about Asia, you have a younger population. You have expectations of gender equality, meaning at work, and flexibility is very important. Agility and agile workforce. These are the key underlying drivers for the what we call the modularization of work, right? Unbundling, work fragmentation. So what we mean by modularization, again, is you do like the gig economy. You do little things, whatever comes in, whatever you can do to help the company or the organization excel. You will be part of a virtual team, maybe, or a project, and do that work in a modular fashion. Globalization, you know about all about that. Productivity, you know factors of production, land, labor, capital, was old school. Now it's all about the experience for the customer. And even the organizational structures are becoming fluid and more matrixed in nature. um, there is there are other elements that are affecting value polarization. Think about um, innovation that's happening, and you're constantly focusing on the value you are delivering to the customer, because the customer doesn't care about how the work is getting done, as long as it is safe and socially acceptable and so on. They don't care about your internal complexity, right? So they just want the value that they will extract. From a labor displacement perspective, we talked about the increase of remote work, especially in the post-COVID environment. I think a lot of companies are going to move away from a headquarter-based work to a distributed and collaborative workforce. Many of them will work from home. Um, and then, the work marketplaces like, yeah, there are sites that help you do moonlighting, like Upwork and things like that. These are work marketplaces. They will, I believe, gain increasing importance in the future. Also for crowdsourcing and open innovation, we talk about open engagement. Um, Again, you are managing the wisdom of the crowd. And from a leadership perspective, um, the key is to realize that command and control doesn't work anymore. It is all about the engagement, and it's all about inclusive leadership. Okay, so inclusive leadership. Remember that it is the key to the future of leadership. You got to take everyone with you, and that's how you become a high performance organization and sustain that into the future. So if we look 10 years forward, we see the emotional workplace, the physical workplace, the technological workplace, and the purposeful workplace. So think about a time 10 years hence where the millennials are now in the decision making level, and they value the employee experience, the customer experience, the emotion at the workplace. The culture of the organization will become more open. Employee well-being, trust, these elements will take center stage, not just financial profits and revenue. Think about the physical workplace. We talk about the virtual increase in virtual work, and physical workplaces will become open workplaces, right? So that trend has already started. You've seen that. Technological workplace, we've talked about technology, a key determinant of how work is going to change. Technology is going to foster new business models and new employee experiences. And the purposeful workplace. So the ideas of leadership and different organizational models, employee engagement, and so on is going to be very focused on the organization's goals and priorities, with the social and sustainability element coming center stage. It's, away from just shareholder value maximization. We are moving, and we have been moving towards stakeholder value maximization. Now, the last slide here is what I call the 8 big trends for the future of work. So let's see, some of them we have already covered. Let's see if we have missed any. Automation revolution we've talked about. I hope that's clear. We can talk about that as we move forward. So this is industrial automation. This is workplace automation driven by technology, software, as well as hardware. Becoming a collaborative company or collaborative organization, not just for private sector, but also public sector and not-for-profits. Collaboration, partly driven by the automation and technology, is increasing significantly. And then humanizing the workplace, we've talked about that. Then more efficient skills development. We didn't talk about learning and development. I think that's also key, because e-learning and different learning styles, whether it's on the job or job rotations, or you know uh, any kind of skill development is going to be key. Not just the knowledge you gain from your university or formal education, but the ongoing skills development and the know-how. The generational impact, of course, depending on your country and depending on the demographic, demographics of the country, the generational impact is key, because the millennial generation, their expectations are slightly different. So we must make sure we understand what they expect and how to maximize their value and how to give them value as well. Improving performance is old school. I mean, that still remains key, because at the end of the day, of course, we have to make money, and revenues and profits matter. So, but again, remember, one of the key trends in the future workplace is the sustainability aspect, the customer focus aspect, and the sort of the stakeholder. Because it's corporate citizenship that's going to take a greater role. Recruitment process and flexible work. I mean, these are part and parcel of the future. Um, Recruitments are going to be more efficient, because now you can use AI actually to pick candidates based on keywords and all that. You have hundreds of applications for a particular job opening, and the softwares help you instantly shortlist to a few, and that significantly improves your job selection. And flexible work, take it as you will. I mean, work is going to become more flexible in terms of time, in terms of place, and in terms of how. I think leaders of the future will be more flexible, because they have grown up in this kind of ecosystem environment. So the future of work, in conclusion, I will say, is going to be very different from what we see today. Just like the work today is very different from what it was in the 50s and 60s, the future meaning, say, 10 years hence. But I don't think that it's going to be a revolution. I believe it's going to be an evolution that is slow and steady. It's going to keep changing. It's not going to be changing overnight. Okay, even with the technology, it takes time for teams and organizations and leadership, people who are in leadership positions, to adapt these new ways and be comfortable with these new um, approaches. So, I think that it is going to be an evolution, and we will definitely see a much more dynamic, much more effective, I should also say, workplace in the future. So I'm going to stop here, if I may, and turn it over to Memory to open it up for our discussions.
Thank you, Doc. I think my first question is, I wanted to leave that last slide on, so that we can ask you a few questions
Sure.
before I open it to others. You talked about humanizing the workplace and also improving performance. I wanted to just highlight again on improving performance. There are people who are arguing now that because of the changes that have been brought by the COVID-19, it's difficult to manage performance. What's your take on that? Then number two is, we know some managers like to see people face to face in the workplace daily.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
how is it going to change, and what are the implications in terms of leadership and management at various levels in an organization?
That's a great questions. So managing performance is still going to be key for any leader, right? Whether you're a project manager or a division head or a CEO or a CXO, uh, you are responsible for delivering results, whether it's financial or operational. So while if you think about COVID-19, it's really operational risk, wasn't it? This was an operational risk, risk driven through the people side of the equation, and you are adapting now, because you are saying, okay, I will now allow people to stay home and work. I remember, yeah, just about, I think it was, yeah, I think it was around 8 months ago, that the CEO, the then CEO of IBM, Ginny Rometty, she's now moved on, but Ginny Rometty, uh, as the sitting CEO of IBM, said that she's not going to allow uh, work from home anymore, and that was, I was actually quite surprised that she said that, which was a complete going in the complete opposite direction to the trend. But she did that, and uh, you know now most organizations around the world are realizing that you've got to become more flexible, more human, because ultimately, if you are not focusing on the employee experience, what we you can call humanizing the workplace means, a lot of experts say that it's not the customer that comes first, it's the employee that comes first, right? So I happen to believe that it's the employee first, then the customer. And that's because if your employee is not satisfied, there's no way your customer is going to be satisfied, right? So you've got to balance the two as a leader. It becomes difficult, and it will become difficult. It's not easy, but you still have to make sure that people focus on their job at hand and deliver what they're supposed to deliver. So there is no way around it. That humanizing the workplace does not mean that your performance is going to suffer. If you're a theory X manager, you'll believe that you have to micromanage. But if you're a theory Y manager, and the millennial workforce again, memory, I'm sure you'll agree that the millennials, they don't want to be micromanaged. They want you to trust them. They are actually uh, they are honest people, they are hardworking people. They want you to trust them. They will actually, um, if you focus on them, they will deliver. I do believe that that inclusive leadership culture, leaders who trust their people. Now, having said that, some employees will cheat, some employees will not do the work. That I think that's fair to assume that not 100 out of 100 employees will be running at 100%. So those that underperform, again, it's the traditional job of the leader to figure out how to help them um, improve their productivity. The second question about the face to face is that, um, from a leadership and management perspective, I mean, I do believe, and I'm not a millennial, so take my words with a grain of salt. I do believe that there's nothing like a handshake and a cup of tea together, or a coffee. I mean, I think no matter how much you send emails and use social media and do uh, video conferencing, you, you know, to me, it's very important to have that human touch. Now, that might be because I'm old school. I'm trying to be new school, but I think at any rate, no matter how much virtual or you know um, virtual home-based work happens, I think a corporate headquarters will always exist. Um, it will become smaller, but some decision makers will, that face to face, you're going to always have that. Board meetings you'll always have, those key leadership team meetings you'll always have. And the interaction that happens there, it's much more, like we know that in communication, the words we speak is only 7% of communication, right? So 93% of communication is the gestures and so on. So there would be a huge amount of loss if it's only the words that are coming across. So very important to have face to face as and when needed. But I do also think that a corporate headquarters that has 20,000 people sitting there, that we used to have in AT&T in Bedminster, New Jersey, those are going to shrink, and it'll become more distributed.
Yeah, yeah, Doc. My other question, which will be my last question before I give others a chance, is that uh, most organizations were caught unawares because of this COVID thing, so that they had to rush to put things in place so that people can start working from home. How
Yep.
ready are the people to accept the fact that they may have to work from home? I've read a number of studies indicating that people are feeling isolated because they are working from home, they're missing their friends, and
Yeah.
how is that going to affect productivity, for example? Then the second one
Yeah.
is on the infrastructure. We know, yes, I can see you are there, I can see friends around the globe, but
Mhm.
how ready are organizations in terms of the general infrastructure and the technology area yourself? How ready are people in terms of rolling out this infrastructure to support the work from home kind of model?
Yeah. So work from home, people right now with COVID, it is work from home by force. There is no option. You go out, you are at risk, you put others at risk. So people are staying home. Even those that want to go to work are often staying at home. Um, I think that post COVID, it's not going to remain like that because the world is going to open up. And, uh, you know, those people who used to go to work and now are working from home, most of these people would probably go back to work in the office and work from there because that is what they like, and that is from a productivity point of view. I mean, it's good to be with the team, that's for sure. And feeling isolated, that isolation effect, people will work from home for a while and then you're right, they would want to go back to work. So I actually believe that it's going to be a hybrid. So if a person pre-COVID was working 100% from the office, from not the home office, but the offsite office campus, he or she now has the infrastructure at home. So they would probably, my guess is, not go to work 100% of the time, probably go to work 90% of the time and 10% do virtual office because they realize that um, it can be as productive depending on the nature of your work. So if you're a computer programmer, you will be actually more productive probably at home, working from home, because you don't have to do that commute time, which can take an hour or more, up and down. So at that time you can rest or you can work, and you can potentially um, be more productive. But if you're in a role that requires a lot of, you know interaction, if you're in sales and marketing roles and so on, um, then you obviously you can't stay home and do it. So we also have to consider the nature of work. I think people will ultimately settle down, and an equilibrium will be reached. Memory. I think people will find out their own comfort zone. Like, I can talk about myself. I have a certain ratio of going to work versus working from home that makes me comfortable given my lifestyle. I think people will also do the same based on their lifestyle and preferences plus job. But I do think that if there are companies that are forcing people to do certain things, that is not going to work. I think forcing people to do things often does not work and is going to be less and less effective with the millennials as we move forward. And in terms of the infrastructure, yes, you're right. Now that people have built their infrastructure, what we see here in the US is, for example, I just saw that AT&T has rolled out work from home infrastructure. So I mean, these things are being offered to companies for their entire workforce. Now, the other element you got to think about is when you allow your employees to work from home, yes, you pay for their infrastructure, but imagine the amount of money you would save because you don't need that huge corporate office anymore. It can shrink to maybe one third its size. So there is a cost advantage that would be there as well. There are some companies like the World Bank, where I used to work, where they have actually done away with uh, office rooms. So when I was there, I used to have office room, but now I'm told that even the president of the World Bank doesn't have an office room. It's like a library. You go in there, you plug in, you just sit on any desk. All you have is like a locker. That's all you have, and a fairly small size. and you go in there. It's a paperless work environment, also for sustainability reasons, and you can just sit. There are meeting rooms, and there is no like rooms. Okay, and if you need to have confidential discussions, there are meeting rooms you can have. You can access those. So I mean that is another thing. So I think that the infrastructure will allow people to kind of balance this work from home versus work from the workplace.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samir. We have opened the floor now to others to participate to ask questions. We've got about 33 participants. So we'll ask them to give us questions. I admitted everyone. You can unmute yourself when you want to speak and ask a question. Then immediately after that, you can mute yourself so that we don't have any background noise. We are now open for questions.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's Wade Cooper. It's truly a privilege to be on this awesome Zoom. And Dr. Asaf, as you've been chatting through, you know, what I'm feeling, and perhaps I'd like to share it with other members, is that there are three certain foundations as leaders that we have to take with us into the new world of work. And one of the foundations is collaboration. I absolutely believe in that. The second is relationships. You know, without relationships in this new world of work, we kind of stuck. And the third is empathetic leadership. So these are drivers in my business that I really focus on and that I prefer. I've actually got to a point in my life where I prefer to work with like-minded people that drive these components. And what I'm finding is in the workplace and the organizations that we assist through Africa and internationally is helping line managers with the most important thing, and that is humanizing the workplace. But unfortunately, it hasn't been a topic of discussion in the past, in my humble opinion. And what I am seeing, and where I'm seeing huge blockages and almost collisions due to the Corona-19 virus, is that line managers are still managing their teams out of their own behavior styles and not understanding that team members are motivated and managed uniquely. And that has to start from the top down. And, you know, that is the first point of entry, because the disruption that we are seeing is not only the personal matters that we find with families and being worried and all these things going around emotionally, but the disruption is around people risk. And we have to bring that back into humanity. And the humanity starts with leaders and the leaders in the teams here. And I think that is a movement that, you know, networks like this have to drive to open up, particularly with line managers that we're working with, is how do they get to understand their team? I mean, the world of work has changed. It's digital, it's agile, it's resilience. We have to understand the competency frameworks and the new competency frameworks and the teams that belong in those competency frameworks. But more importantly, is managing with humanity, with empathetic management styles. And, you know, we can have all the technology and everything out there, but if we don't stop changing or start changing the mindsets, we're going to be stuck in a serious situation.
Yeah.
That's a great the great set of points you've made. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. Collaboration, relationships, and empathic leadership are key. I think these blockages you refer to, I see that too. To be honest, in a fairly large percentage of leaders, and my explanation for that is that you know, if you look at the C-suite today, a lot of organizations, boardrooms and C-suite people are, many of them are actually fairly senior people. Like many of them are in their 60s, and if we look at that particular age bracket, you know, they were trained in the, what I would say, traditional leadership style. I don't want to say it's a bad leadership style. It's just a traditional leadership style that that worked very well in the 50s and 60s and 70s. You know, command and control, you know, and things like that. And what you refer to as a need for collaboration and focusing on the relationships and being empathic, this is partly, I would say, difficult for some of these senior leaders, because they are not used to uh, you know working in that particular leadership style. So when you talk about line managers today, they're still, some of them are still focusing on, you know, the old fashioned leadership, top down, you know, do as I say, um, and that kind of leadership. And I don't need to really understand you. You just do what you are required to do. I think that leadership style is not going to work. You,
No.
because these leaders are going to realize, it's just a question of time. They will realize that they are just not being effective. Now,
Yeah.
if they leverage tools like 360-degree feedback from employees, I think these things can really help, because their
Yeah.
perception, self perception, that they are good leaders, they're getting the job done. Yeah, that's right. They might be achieving their KPIs. That doesn't make them good leaders, right? So when they get this 360-degree feedback from their subordinates and coworkers and so on, peers, they would realize that people are actually saying that they need to be more empathic, and then that would drive the change that we are looking for.
Yes. I appreciate that, Dr. Asaf, and you know the like-mindedness is, and with the team members too, is it has to start with us, and we call that in our business leading self, and you know we cannot move on to leading change or leading others if we don't even know how to lead ourselves. And it's been a blessing, you know, driving the empathetic leadership styles, you know, through AI technology and creating and being part of networks like this, because it has to start with ourselves as leaders. And I appreciate you taking the time and your response. It's really appreciated, sir.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
Go ahead, Samir.
yeah. I was just going to say that you know, Stephen Covey wrote a book called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Many of you probably have read it or have probably attended their training programs. I used to be a master trainer in Seven Habits of Highly Effective People at one time. And yeah, this whole idea of what you refer to as leading yourself, which is very, very important. This is actually one of the things Stephen Covey talks about as well. That he says that you have to be able to lead yourself, what he calls private victory. He says that, you know, things like, you know, setting your own life's mission, vision, goals, priorities, doing your weekly planning, doing your daily prioritizations, focusing on your relationships, your health, your whatever, your family and your relationships, plus continuous learning and so on. All these, if you do all these, then you will have achieved what he calls private victory, which we are talking about, you know, self leadership. So only then he says that people will only allow you to lead them when they can see that you can lead yourself properly. So that is where then he moves on to talk about public victory. Now, private victory was leading yourself, and then public victory, he talks about your relationship with others. That means your coworkers, subordinates, your family, your friends, you know, everybody outside you. So that brings you to your listening skills, which is very important, right? The empathic listening. Then he talks about think win-win, right? So
Yeah.
the win-win mentality, very important. And then he talks about you know what he calls about talks about uh, sharpen the saw. So basically, you're all the time improving yourself, and he talks about synergy. So that means as a leader, you believe that two brains work better than one.
100%.
Yeah, so that just wanted to mention the 7 habits.
I agree 100%, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Let me give, are there any other questions from the other participants?
Yes, may I?
Yes, Prosper, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks to Dr. Samir. Hey, that was quite an eye-opening session we had with you. Three things actually I want to ask. First, performance management, the traditional performance management systems, balance scorecards, 360-degree feedback, as we know them now, versus the distributed work that's like the future of work, distributed work environments, versus the command and control leadership that you spoke about, and then versus the 70% workforce being millennials, as you indicated. What do you see would be the method of performance management? Then question two, if we look at how the disruptions that are happening in industry right now, in life, what would you say will be the professions of the future? Like if I were to advise my employees is for future development, which polymath will survive the future?
Okay.
Then the last question, computing. It looks like everything that's happening right now, all the changes that are happening in industry, work from home, information technology, it's all based on computing. Would you say, in your opinion, computing is the proper and sure technology to base the future on? Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Samir.
Yes, thanks. So thanks for the questions. So let me start with the first one. So what is the best method for performance management, given that work is becoming more distributed? We are getting more and more millennials in the workplace. Well, yes, you're right. Traditionally, we've had the balance scorecard, which is a great tool. I think that's not going away. Then 360-degree feedback also not going away. What is going to change, I believe, is these systems are going to become more real time. Okay, so if you look at the traditional balance scorecard approach, you used to set a KPI, you used to look at the 4 different perspectives, and you used to set these goals that connect to each other from the learning and growth perspective to to the process perspective, and then to the customer perspective, and then to the financial perspective. That logic still holds. So very important when we talk about humanizing the workplace, when we talk about focusing on people. Those of you who know about the balance scorecard, you'll know that the key thesis which will continue into the future is this relationship that Kaplan and Norton talk about in Balanced Scorecard, is that everything, organizational performance management really starts with people. So that's the first perspective that they talk about. That's the prime mover. They say the learning and growth perspective, i.e. the people perspective. So you train people well, your people are happy and satisfied, you focus on the employee experience. What that does is you have a highly productive, happy workforce. I should also say highly engaged workforce. So from that, they talk about the fact that if your people are happy, they'll perform the processes well, and therefore the process perspective comes in. And so your processes are carried out perfectly. What does that do? That will help your customers be satisfied because your product quality will be good, your customer service will be good because all the processes are being followed properly. So, and once your customers are satisfied, finally you see the rewards in terms of financial perspective. That's where the revenue growth, the profit, and so on kicks in. So in that sense, the financial perspective becomes a lag indicator, not a lead indicator for performance. It is the learning and growth perspective that becomes the leading indicator. The process perspective and the customer perspective, these three become the lead indicators for performance, and we call them organizational health indicators. So I want you to think about organizational performance on the one side and organizational health on the other side. Right? So separate these two things. Organizational performance, what's my revenue growth, what's my profit margin, what's my earnings per share, how did we do, and whatever. That whole thing is about management, not leadership. All right, so performance management is management. Leadership is all about people and relationships and the pat on the back and say, how are you doing today? So the leader is really focusing on the lead indicators, which are the people and the processes and the customer. So in terms of method for performance management, I think things like balanced scorecard and 360-degree feedback will continue, will become more real time, not once a year, once a quarter, once a month, once a week. We're talking real time data from systems and from people. So the IoT brings data from your systems and your machines, and you have real-time employee engagement platforms that bring in feedback from employees, customers, and partners in real time. So now it's a fully connected situation. And your balance scorecard, your KPIs, and your critical success factors, and all those things are getting updated continuously. Now you are a leader who has a dashboard, which is like, I'm not talking about the future of performance management. You have a dashboard. It's a real-time dashboard. You can see it and everybody else can see it who you give access to. And you can actually see how you're performing from a multi-stakeholder perspective. So there your bias goes down and you are being able to focus on the people side of the equation, i.e. the organizational health more. And you're realizing that it's the organizational health that you need to focus on, i.e. the leading indicators, that's going to ultimately drive your financial performance. Because ultimately, yes, no matter 10 years in the future, 20 years in the future, 50 years in the future, if you don't make money, you won't exist. So that bottom line, triple bottom line approach is fine, but financial performance will still be key. So I hope that answers the question in terms of method of performance management, much more real time, much more data centric, much more multi-stakeholder approach. And I think even from an employee performance appraisal point of view, which used to be once a year, that is also changing. It is becoming continuous. Just like you're seeing continuous audits, you are going to have continuous, ongoing performance appraisals and feedback. And so kind of much more collaborative performance management, right? And also think about the big data and AI and this whole analytics, world of analytics and explosion of data. What that does to performance management is, again, gives you much more information, much more real-time information to manage performance of your project, of your processes. You got business processes, real-time data on process performance management as well, not just people performance. So I'll move on to the second question regarding what are the right professions of the future given the industry disruptions that are taking place. So you will have to look at your economy first. So your economic structure and the key industries in your country. And then you'll probably see, some countries have oil and gas big. Some countries have, textiles big. Some countries have technology that's big. And so you can always, pick out the top few industries in your country, and from a global perspective, you can also think about things if you're kind of taking a global view. um, I think professions of the future will definitely be more data driven. So the ability to leverage data will be, well, make decisions based on data, right, is going to be more and more important. And a profession like data science is really hot. Okay. um, a data scientist, I was looking at some projections that the world will need several 100,000 data scientists in the next few years, and only 10% or 15% of that are coming out from the universities. um, I mean, computing is driving, and as part of your third question, I'm kind of mixing both up, that uh, in the future you will need to be more technology savvy. There's no way around it, right? So not just data and analytics, but the ability to use technology, the ability to understand technology. The types of work that are, what I should say, customer experience based. Every company is focusing on customer experience. All right. So any job that, or any kind of degree or education or learning that helps you with customer experience management is going to be key. Data is going to be key. I think um, you will need to have the ability to be flexible. I think that is not highlighted enough. That in the future, it's not like you just do one thing. You will be, you will have to be able to evolve. Even if you're a computer scientist, you will need to understand other disciplines and where they're coming from, and how your discipline connects with another discipline, um, and how it is relevant. I mean, I'm not. I think you will need specialization, but you will also need to be able to connect and synthesize your area of skill and expertise with other areas that are relevant to it. So when you look at different industry, we talk about blurring of industry boundaries. Yes, the industries are blurring. So are, like, let me talk about finance and economics. I mean, today an economist is also a financial economist. You don't study macroeconomics unless you study the capital market and the money market. So the finance and economics gets merged into one. If you are an accountant and you are just doing bookkeeping and you're a bean counter, that job is going to go away, because books are going to be automatically consolidated by the software. So the accountant's job will stay if you are actually combining accounting with finance. All right, so you understand capital market, you understand corporate finance, not just bean counting. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, every, whether you're a doctor or whether you're a accountant, you will need to become technology savvy, because every job will be driven by software. So these days you see nanotechnology coming in. If you're a doctor, you're performing a surgery using a computer, right? You're not actually going in and doing it. It's being done by the nanotechnology and the devices. So again, I think, look at your economy and the sectors that interest you, and see how technology is driving it, because technology is driving every industry, and get the skills in those areas, so that you are able to lead and add value and contribute to that space. Sorry for a long-winded answer.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the participants? Dr. Samir, I think you have given us a fair share of this particular topic. I would like to thank you very much for agreeing to talk to HR professionals and other people from Zimbabwe. We hope to engage you again in the future so that we can continue the dialogue on other topics. I know you're an economist, you're a finance director, you're a technology person. I think you're an example of what you were talking about in terms of being techno-savvy as we go into the future. I would like to thank you again. Any final words from you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Memory, and I want to thank all the participants because it was a great, honor to be with all of you. I also learned a lot from your questions and some of the observations. So, yep, I wish you all the best in this difficult situation, and thanks again, Memory, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.